Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance in this terrific dialogue with the new Untouchables. We are recording this on Friday, March 20th, 2026 at approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And as always, I'll start the dialogue with just sharing what's happening in mainstream media so that we can react and kind of look at, what everybody else is in the midst of, which is a lot. But to basically consider this the framing of all things that we might respond to, just a particularly interesting headline in the upper left-hand side of the New York Times today. Hegseth invokes divine purpose to justify military might. Now, of course, that's not part of the whatever 29-step process he may have been attending before he got the job as Secretary of War. But here we are with obviously what a lot of people are calling online, potentially a crusade within the whole biblical construct. But as oil prices and, of course, strategic fears and markets get roiled all over the world, I found this to be particularly interesting. Trump officials bypass Congress to sell weapons to UAE, Kuwait, and Jordan. Well, I wasn't sure what Congress was doing anyway, but I guess that certainly reveals a lot about the impotence of Congress to be able to thwart this administration from doing really anything except for potentially hold some hearings. The U.S. economy is insulated from high oil prices, but Americans aren't. And of course, that is all things the affordability crisis. And then Hamas, this I found really interesting, considering disarmament plan from Trump's Board of Peace. I could almost see that in a Naked Gun sort of satire. It's working, right? Trump saying it's working. But more close to the vest of what we discuss typically, U.S. prosecutors are investigating Colombia's president, who was a one-time Trump foe. Justice Department seeks to drop charges against officers in Breonna Taylor's death. Obviously, that certainly configures to what we have seen all things in Minnesota and ICE and around the country, and quite frankly, qualified immunity. And further down, we see Trump friend asked ICE to detain the mother of his child, which is interesting. And, more. Obviously, Chuck Norris, my favorite moment with him and Bruce Lee. He sadly passed away today, but he lived a long and fruitful life. And I'll come back to a lot of things, but one thing I just wanted to kind of investigate, all things Epstein considered. This whole investigation into Cesar Chavez, like decades after, and it's really interesting of all the information that's coming out there, but so much more. And in the midst of really everything that's coming at us in an overwhelming situation, fraud was front and center with, of course, Donald Trump's supposedly war on fraud and putting Vice President J.D. Vance as the czar of fighting fraud. And from what I've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks, is really the focus on Somali and all things what happened during, I would say during COVID. And, I read that it was as much as 50% of what federal subsidies were during that time period were actually stolen. But meanwhile, we know the fraud is endemic or pandemic in every direction of the Trump administration, including 70 pardons that Trump has foisted out to all manner shape of significant white collar fraudsters, particularly, Paul, I found this to be interesting as well, in Medicare and Medicaid fraud. So we'll get things started, but as dark and as gloomy as it is, I want to say that we do have one significant bright spot. The Government Accountability Project, led by Lewis Clark, the executive director, and his staff, that has been involved with incredibly important cases, particularly as they relate to revelations of all things happening within the Trump administration, has had three significant victories this week that include a victory about overreach of Carrie Lake involving Voice of America, also a case involving, I think that could have had impact to tens of millions of potential workers in the United States by way of whistleblower status. And then lastly, what we touched upon last week as well, which was the case of the derailment and the train derailment, I should say, in East Palestine, Ohio, that took place. several years ago. And I want to open this up with you, Lewis. Maybe you can give us
Yeah.
an overview and some insight into what all of this is about.
Well, yeah. Well, essentially, I mean, the way, of course, I would view it as, we won three victories around the rule of law. And an interesting sort of side note is that the Trump administration was against us on one, with us on another, and was nowhere to be found in the third one. So, that was just sort of ironic. But the in terms of Voice of America, for the last year, it's been run by Carrie Lake, who was the CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which is a large media organization that includes Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, and Radio Free Asia, and actually 30 some networks of broadcasts all over the world, with an audience of 360 million people weekly. And then it all got shut down on March 15th of last year. And then Carrie Lake was at that time the CEO and has run the organization for an entire year. But the problem is, and there are a lot of problems, but one of them that we brought up in a lawsuit about the laying off of all those people, the entire agency practically, was that she was never confirmed by the Senate. And there's, certain rules about that. You cannot fill a position that's supposed to be confirmed by the Senate by an acting person for an entire year. And so every decision she has made for the last 12 months is now null and void, which including trying to lay off or laying off or actually I should say locking out of all the employees, just locking the door of the entire agency, and then running the organization with about 40 people, or 40 or 50 people versus over 2,000 normally. And so that's one of the issues, and and that was a great win, and a great win for the American people, and because that's the kind of soft diplomatic power, where you're broadcasting to the entire world unbiased news. And the mission of that operation is essentially democracy. And, with the assumption that if you, if you want to encourage democracy, then what you do is you broadcast to the countries that have dictators unbiased news so that they at least know what's going on. And that's the first step at essentially democratizing the world. So that's one victory that I won't spend as much time on the other two, but one is at in North Carolina, the um, the Purdue Farms, which is a contractor to all these poultry farmers all over the country. And these farmers had blown the whistle essentially on Purdue in terms of the health of their products, in terms of antibiotics and a lot of other issues. And so they blew the whistle. Their contracts were suspended, or they were essentially fired, or pushed out of the industry. And they're suing. We're representing them. And then what the cases were is, all of a sudden, in the middle of this entire process of representing them, Purdue all of a sudden files a lawsuit against the Department of Labor, as well as these two poultry farmers that we represent, saying that the entire whistleblower provisions of the Food Safety Modernization Act is unconstitutional, because it means that the administrative law within the Department of Labor doesn't allow for jury trials. And these companies, Purdue, as a person, is entitled to a jury trial. if you're trying to get them to change what they're doing, paying out money, etc., if they lose. And so the two cases were consolidated, and the district court judge ruled that indeed this law is not unconstitutional. And what's important is there's 25 other laws that we have helped to develop and that have passed, covering food safety, airline safety, environmental concerns, financial concerns. All these corporate law, whistleblower laws have the same provisions in terms of the administrative law process. So it would have nullified essentially whistleblower protection for all corporate workers. But that case was thrown out with prejudice, so they can't bring it back. So that's the second one. The third one was in East Palestine, Ohio, where we're helping the residents. We have lots of whistleblowers. We have tons of whistleblowers. In addition, a tremendous amount of information about essentially the cover up of the health concerns throughout that community. And there is a consent decree by which the federal government is hoping to settle with Norfolk Southern, the rail company that was responsible for the derailment within that community. That 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 all of a sudden, this consent decree has us at the table as well. We won an opportunity to be a part of that consent decree as it's shaped and developed with our evidence. And so they're going to essentially accept all our evidence, and it'll be part of the consideration. In that case, the Trump administration was on the sidelines, and Biden and Trump are both have done very little, did very little for those people in East Palestine. I should say in the poultry case, that the Trump administration did side with us on that case.
Wow, that's tremendous information, and congratulations to you and your team. And June Carbone,
That guy, Patrick, can I ask a question of Lewis first?
Yes,
Lewis, it's my understanding that Carrie Lake pretty much shut down Voice of America. What's the practical effect of the judge's opinion and order? Is that going to be re-engineered to be worldwide again? How does that work?
totally. What he's ordered is that the agency bring all the people back, put them to work. I mean, they've been paid for an entire year and haven't been able to work. They're frozen out of their jobs, so they can't do any work. But now they come back into the office, and they make the agency work throughout the world like before.
Wow, excellent. And are they going to appeal it?
They appealed. It was either today or yesterday.
But have they sought a stay and he's denied the stay?
He hasn't. That's before him. The judge has not ruled on the stay.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Lewis.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. And June, June Carbone, the Rubina Chair of Law, Science, and Technology at the University of Minnesota, also an alum of Yale, and just really the soul a lot of the times in reacting to the moment of all of this insanity. But considering the train wreck of the Trump administration, that's all pretty delightful news, all things considered. What's your takeaway, and whatever else is top of mind?
Well, I mean, there are a number of things I've been rethinking this week. Number one, I had hoped that and predicted, including on the show, Trump would produce a financial crisis, perhaps of the order of what took place in 2008. And if it went well enough, it would inoculate the United States against totalitarian fantasies. And, with the new administration in 2029, cleaning up would be much like what Obama faced. I think that's no longer true. I think what Trump has done is not simply to engineer what may be a global financial crisis, but the scrambling of the world order, weakening the United States, particularly vis-a-vis China and Russia, and making more likely both global depressions and world war, at the very least, empowering China. And the question is how to think about that. So I've been emphasizing that what a new administration needs to think about is not programmatic. Not how do we bring back the voice of America? That's so hard. It is how do you re-engineer power in the face of a wholesale usurpation of the instruments of American power, including the Supreme Court and sidelining Congress. Well, now, with the world order being torn to shreds and new alliances certain to form, I think those of us in the US who are appalled by this administration need to think in different terms. And the ways in which we all know Democrats are incompetent at politics, people like Trump and J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson are thinking about a global autocratic order. They are selling out the interest of the United States. We know that. They've sold out to Putin a long time ago, but they're selling out to others. And what we need to start thinking about is what a new world order looks like by small d Democrats committed to the rule of law. And I want to throw out two fairly radical ideas. Radical because the United States has largely been together on the issue of what American interests are. We no longer are. And I think we need to start thinking about a couple of things. One, how do we rebuild international institutions? Turns out there is a law professor at South Carolina talking about the question. Should we be thinking in terms of prosecutions of those engineering illegal acts of war, violating international rules, committing war crimes? Pete Hegseth is the top of the list. Donald Trump is right up there with him if he lives long enough. We ought to be thinking about what that looks like, engineered in a way that protect real American interest, democracy and the rule of law. Secondly, what are international alliances about? I can imagine walking into a negotiation on behalf of the new administration with Canada, and they will say, we don't believe a word you say. You can't guarantee it will succeed the next president. Well, how about thinking about a global order that locks in win-win deals for the United States and Canada and other countries when Democrats, not Democratic Party, small d Democrats who adhere to the rule of law and order and that blow up or have disadvantageous clauses when autocrats take power? What does it mean to construct a world order that brings back the rule of law? And the final piece in that is to think about the oligarchs. I mean, we were all laughing. Mark Zuckerberg is moving from California to Florida. Elon Musk moved to Texas. They wish to escape California socialists. And California is not in love with them the way California used to be. But you need to start thinking of those things in global terms. Epstein operated at a global level. The oligarchs are operating at a global level, and they may well be vulnerable to global regulation. We have not thought in those terms. We need to start doing so. And my final point, I don't know where I am on the Epstein files. I had predicted some weeks ago that Trump is so clearly terrified of what's in the Epstein files, and I had a hard time believing he's that terrified of simply sexual indiscretions, even underage sex. I mean, there's so many adult women who have accused him, and only E. Jean Carroll has gotten through, and she got through because she was able to sue in New York state courts, and New York changed the statute of limitations. And Trump's terrorizing of his accusers, with Michael Cohen, of course, being his fixer in charge of such things for years. I don't think he really feared those allegations. But I don't know. I am changing my mind on that. I think he's afraid of the allegations of sexual improprieties, including rape, um, uh, with underage sex being rape and involuntary by definition. But I think there's a whole lot more there we don't know about. And I go back and forth between thinking we're beginning to see a picture of accusations by underage girls, but those may still be dismissed as something you can't prosecute. What else is there? And so what you sent today, the newest allegations about Todd Blanche blocking release of information about an investigation about Epstein's drug dealing. And finally, tying all together where I started, the Russians are clearly involved in this. The Russians, Trump has admitted in the past, so have his sons, that it is Russian oligarchs who bailed him out after he went bankrupt in the casino business. We've never seen an investigation of his financial ties with Russia. We've never seen the real investigation. I mean, he wants to talk about Russia, Russia, Russia hoax, and is still bringing new cases with James Comey, of all people, in Florida before Eileen Cannon. We have never heard anything about the counterintelligence investigation that Mueller kept classified. What were Trump's ties to Russia? I am there.
Well, we talked about briefly last week. I found it really interesting that Senator Sheldon Whitehouse spent an exorbitant amount of time on the floor of the House making that case, again, 20 years later. And Paul Peltier, the veteran of the Department of Justice, been there throughout all of this stuff, currently adjunct professor at George Washington University and in private practice as well. And great to have you back, Paul. Last week, we had Chris Swecker, the former assistant director of criminal investigations for the FBI, senior guy at your level, talked about a lot of stuff. I didn't press him on the 302s, but in the meantime, over this last week, right, I have been seeing SARS questions everywhere. I started off with you a year ago asking you about SARS, and we kind of just walk over it and this, that, and the other. We know what you were involved with, at least in being asked questions by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists regarding all of the SARS that took place, that probably even included some of these things about Trump. But given this latest round, what June just mentioned, but also this testimony of Richard Kahn, the accountant, it just seems to me like this could have easily been really dealt with significantly decades ago, and here we are.
Well, I found it fascinating, and I agree with June that I think a lot of this goes back to Russia. But I found it fascinating that when Todd Blanche was interviewed on a podcast this week, it was the wife of MAGA Goebbels there, Stephen Miller, and she actually was asking some fairly tough questions. One of them being, why haven't you released all the files? And he said, well, we have. And of course, that's a lie. They have not. There's at least 3 million files that haven't been released. But then she also said to him, why haven't you followed any of these leads? And effectively, why haven't you followed any leads? And basically, his answer was, and it was complete and utter bullshit, but it was, look, that's why we made them public. It's for the American people to decide. And I'm like, are you kidding me? The American people doesn't do the American people don't do the investigations. The FBI does, right? And so it's a very bizarre answer. And quite frankly, you know, this investigation, the Epstein investigation has been going on for a long time, since at least 2006, right? 2004, 5, and 6. So you can't put it all on Trump, right? So you have to sort of lay it in the hands of DOJ and the FBI. But I do think Trump believes Epstein is his Achilles heel. I think there's some real nasty stuff in that he knows about. Whether it ever comes public, I don't know. And when he, gives a birthday card to Epstein that says if it's our secret. There's definitely something going on there that he doesn't like. But Trump also knows the American people, and he also knows that for Trump, there's no yesterday, right? For every day is Groundhog Day with Trump, and he doesn't care about what happened yesterday. It's a new day. The public will forget it. Look at the way he talks about this war. He changes his story every single day, 180 degrees from the day before. So I think he's counting on that. But one of the things we did learn when Bill Clinton took his deposition, Bill Clinton said exactly what Epstein has said. Our relationship broke up over the sale, his stealing a piece of real estate from me that I wanted to buy. That's exactly what Bill Clinton said. Bill Clinton said, the only thing I remember is Epstein telling me that their relation broke up over a real estate deal. And then we learned from something that a document that Congressman, what's his name from New York, revealed today or yesterday, where he took the whole everything that was redacted. He showed on the House floor, and it was a conversation between Brad, I forget his last name, the defense attorney for the victims. He had agreed to have a conversation with Trump's lawyer, Alan Garten, rather than a deposition of Trump. And they were asking questions. And one of them was, what was the reason? Did Trump ever kick Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago? Which Trump has said, I kicked him out because he was taking my underage girls, right? Of Mar-a-Lago. And Alan Garten said, no, he was never thrown out. Never thrown out of Mar-a-Lago, principally because he was never a member there, first of all. But secondly, he was never thrown out of there. And so I think a lot of it all goes back to Russia again, at least as it relates to this. And I'll link it all up, I think, in a minute. But at the end of the day, Epstein says, I wasn't worried about him taking this property from me because he had no money. He had no money. And he said, what I didn't realize and I didn't understand is he had access to Russian money. And that's how he bought this house. And we all remember that 2 years after he bought it, in the middle of the great financial crisis, he sold it to a Russian oligarch for double the price he paid for it in an all-cash deal. So why do I say any of that? Well, there's a reason why the FBI didn't follow up on any of these leads. It appears because we see no 302s with a follow-up investigation. Recently we've seen Wyden's investigation where he's trying to follow the money, and apparently there was a drug money laundering investigation going on with respect to Epstein, but that doesn't appear to be followed up on either. So I think that Wyden's onto something. I think that this Russian investigation it needs to come to fruition, because the beauty of sex trafficking is there's no statute of limitations. But it's very clear that the Department of Justice isn't going to start that investigation. And it's also very clear to me, I don't know why, that nobody ever pursued that investigation. And I'm sorry I missed last week. I would love to ask Chris Schwecker that question. Let's see what his thoughts are.
Well, we'll try to make that happen. And again, to William K. Black, Mr. Black, the consummate professor of criminology, a criminologist, an expert in all things the law and regulation and economics, and a guide for myself and my colleague Eric Vaughan throughout the years, and a guy who's been deep in all of the analytics and the forensics of the money. And I found myself, again, with these suspicious activity reports, all these things with the accountant. Oh yeah, I didn't know what he was doing. And then we know that, JP Morgan Chase and Jess Staley and the nature of Bear Stearns and, Jimmy Kane, and also then Deutsche Bank, and all that goes with it. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, well, Eric and I, with the help of you guys, could have put a 7-part series together that blew this out of the, water. But Mr. Black, look, in context to the 70 pardons, the way you've laid out, how crypto is used to potentially or to actually to enable these pardons, just the absolute bottom of the barrel of corruption right now. I think a lot of the American people, minus what this victory was for Lewis earlier in this dialogue, are feeling really despondent, are feeling really lost, are feeling that everything is captured, everything is controlled. There is no chance moving forward. But you have had ideas the whole time alongside your colleagues with state legislatures, a campaign of no robber barons. I'll let you run with it from there. But I think if anybody could help us design a way out of it, and you have been the entire time, what can you tell the American people, moving forward?
Right. So we've gone through why you don't have to wait to try to win a midterm election at the federal level, but you already have state legislatures, state AGs that can bring people in, have them testify under oath, and break open this. And the fact that Democrats have not made corruption the paramount issue is just, again, no surprise to most of us. The political malpractice is enormous. I want to focus on what people have been saying and bring it into a little criminology theory as well. We've emphasized that this administration is corrupt, and we've emphasized that they're incompetent, right? And we've emphasized that the only way you can get a job in the senior level is to lie. You have to lie about the prior election, right? That Trump lost, and you have to claim that Trump won that election, and how that's a brilliant selection tool, a screening tool. Are you willing to lie? Are you willing to make obvious lies that make absolutely no sense? And if you are, then you're my kind of guy, because I know I can have you say anything, right? But we've emphasized the kakistocracy. That's just a fancy Greek word for a rule by incompetence. That these things cluster, right? The people willing to lie the most also tend to be particularly incompetent. But what's emerging that is so depressing is two aspects of that. One aspect is they're also crazy. A significant subsection of these people are nuts. And they're nuts on all kinds of different dimensions. They're religious kooks that want an Armageddon, right? And they see using Israel in these attacks under their weird Christian stuff as a prelude to Armageddon. And we now have hundreds of officers holding meetings in which they spread this Armageddon messianic stuff, right? That's really loony. But also, you just heard that we've had this enormous asset, right? And indeed, it's been criticized from the left mostly, historically, which is our whole international news efforts, right? This is what Lewis and some of his latest whistleblowers have been talking about. Super brief story. 35 years ago, talking with husband-wife team, Russian experts, spent a year when there was still a Soviet Union, came out of it and were staggered, despite the fact that they were absolute experts on the communist regime, on how weirdly their understanding of facts during that year had been warped. The saying in Russia was, there's no truth in the news and no news in the truth. Nepravda izvestia, neizvestia pravda, type of thing. And so they hadn't been listening to Radio Free Europe and other such things. So as much as the left criticizes this has been for hundreds of millions of people an absolute godsend in terms of understanding the world. It is unambiguously in the interests of the United States of America. Why did Trump decide to destroy it? Why, when we see what Iranian drones can do in terms of damage, do we spurn the absolute world's experts in countering those drones, the Ukrainians? And we didn't just spurn them. Trump and his minions went out of their way to insult Zelensky over the last 3 weeks as the person who was offering to help the United States counter these drones. Americans are dying because of this. And this move to remove sanctions on the Russians in terms of oil at a time where the Russians are providing not just targeting information, but precise targeting information, as in what specific exterior site should you attack with the drone to kill the CIA section members. That level of intelligence, which is only coming from the Russians. So this group of people is supporting this president of the United States who is doing things that are in any facial basis insane for an American president, but really, really good for Russia. And just I won't go into it, but there is a German parallel to this that is incredible, right? The former head of state of Germany went to work at more than $1 million a pop for Gazprom, a Russian oil company. And the Germans adopted for 25 years, in German it rhymes, change through trade. That as long as they just did trade, there'd be kumbaya, and that the former Soviet Union would become this great Europeanized ally of freedom and democracy. Complete nonsense. And Deutsche Bank was a major feature in how the Germans attempted to produce this. And Deutsche Bank, I will tell you, as a former bank regulator, financial regulator, is and has been for decades notorious as the worst of the worst of the worst. And guess whose bank it was?
Putin.
Trump and Epstein's.
And Putin too, yes.
And Putin.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I had that opportunity to talk with David Enrich, the deputy investigative editor of the New York Times, who wrote the book Shadow Towers, which is that book, the triumphant. And Marc, the former state attorney general of Ohio, currently in the proprietor of Dan Law, and all things way out in front of consumer law and being like just the worker in the trenches on everything that's been happening in this administration against corruption, so on and so forth. You're so steeped in everything that's going on, but given the ludicrousness of what we're talking about, right? It almost feels schizophrenic, right? You've got this war against Iran, and then they get rid of sanctions on oil on Iran and Russia. For what exactly? And yet there's no strategic sort of parallels, except for maybe guys that are working for the tech bros and whatever is happening with MBS, wherever the big hive money is, right? Don't want to go into setting up the question too much, but you've got a lot in front of you. You know how bad things are at the moment and what happens if we don't get, the blue wave and we control Congress, but we know all of the weaknesses, as your colleagues have pointed out and you have throughout, that there doesn't seem to be a cohesive vision by the Democrats to rise and create a requisite plan of this corruption and this insanity. What's your reaction to all of it?
I think we're seeing a little bit more of that going on. There's been talk of comparing the costs of of the daily billions of dollars that we're spending daily in Iran, with the cost of increasing access to healthcare and the cost of increasing access to food for children in the country. And the Democrats need to continue to make that contrast. I think they also need to focus on the economics of war. And the tech bros, the tech oligarchs, have made a hard turn towards defense work, from Musk to Palantir to and I think what the Democrats need to be focused on, and especially, and there's a huge opportunity coming, because Trump needs more money to fund this Iran. Well, he calls I think he's called it everything but a quagmire. He called it an excursion. Then he called it a war. Then he called it a warlike excursion. But whatever it is, it's costing billions and billions of dollars a day, and they need a reappropriation to do it. And they have to go to Congress to get it. They can impound funds, but they haven't, until they get control of the Federal Reserve, apparently they can't just create funds. And by the way, don't underestimate the significance of that as well. That everybody focuses on the interest rates, but the control of currency and the control of money making and the control of and the ability to manipulate in favor of people who bribe him, the financial institutions that the Federal Reserve regulates. All matters too. So, I mean, look, I just see this war as another part of the grift. The defense industry is buying the crypto and making the payments and contributing to MAGA Inc. and all those other fake places, and he's listening to the people that are writing him checks. He's not listening to anybody else. Or writing him checks or giving or buying his kids crypto or whatever else people are doing. So, it's been a good week for Russia, for sure. Their influence in the world has grown. It's a great week for China. China is going to benefit hugely from the shuffling of alliances that are coming from these attacks in Iran. But the Democrats need to focus on what we're not doing here. Because that's what voters are going to be focused on. And they're driving by, the gas stations every day, as I do, watching the prices go up. They're going to the grocery store, suffering the same price shock that's been going on since back in the pandemic. And all the effort and all the treasure that's going to go into this. To this war could be alleviating all that, I've now become addicted to watching Pete Hegseth's morning briefing, which is entertaining for sure, but not in a good way. All this talk of our manifest destiny and the mandate from God to cure, I guess, to purge the world of people of different faiths is amazing and offensive to so many Americans. And yet, once again, the Democrats have been virtually silent on this. At least George Bush, I ran in 2006, at least George Bush made the pretense of spreading the rule of law and democracy when he invaded Kuwait and when Dad invaded Kuwait and son invaded Iraq. They don't even bother with that anymore. I mean, it is. I think Pete Hegseth thinks he's in Game of Thrones. And now they're treating and Trump views the world through a Game of Thrones lens, and it's truly troubling that might is right, and that we can just simply impose our will around the world. Well, what that's going to do is drive all of these democracies closer to closer to China, closer to Russia. Certainly Central America, having cut off certain countries from oil. I mean, I guess the Russian oil is steaming its way to Cuba right now. The unintended consequence, or perhaps the consequences that they don't care about while they're paying off their debts to the people that supported them, is, and I mean, and look, I mean, I'm Jewish and I'm a Jewish Democrat, and it's a tough time for that, the AIPAC lobby has, is right front and center in driving this, and they have been a huge economic force in funding Trump and his campaigns and his corruption. And here's there was an interesting story in the I think it was the Wall Street Journal this week about all the people that Trump has pardoned that are now not just sulking away in embarrassment over having been convicted and then pardoned, but they're actively engaged in funding or in growing businesses that are now doing business with the government, including defense contractors. I mean, it is that corruption is obvious, and that's where the focus needs to be. This is yet another. I know we sound like a broken record on this podcast, but it's just another example of the grift. And this is you can really boil it all down to that. Never credit incompetence with something that you can attribute to corruption with these folks.
Yeah,
usually it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's
Wait,
not
Bill?
though, Mark.
Yeah.
Palantir is giving them. This is not defense. This is oppression, and this is the effort to cancel elections or put the thumb on the scale through Palantir and similar entities. So they're always double tracking. This ain't about.
Right. Well, and there's and Trump expects continued loyalty from these folks, and shows absolutely no loyalty to the people that he appoints. I mean, why anybody at this point would accept an appointment in the Trump administration? Other than unless they thought they were going to enrich themselves, or they really like to fly on jets. I mean, I don't know, but there is such a huge opportunity here, and the Democrats have been quiet about this. I think they're and in fact, because they are held back by some of the same corruptors, and until they shake the handcuffs of the oligarchs, we're just not going to see the campaign that needs to be waged. Now, all that said, people are so disdainful of Trump at this point that the election is going to be good for Democrats no matter what. It really is hard to screw this up. The prevailing winds are so strong, and Trump is truly, in terms of the way he presents the decisions that he makes, so incompetent and so bad, and so used to only having to. He really is only running a country that he thinks is composed of people that supported him.
Yeah.
And doesn't understand at all the idea that he's the president for all of us. Again, another great argument that we're not hearing nearly enough from the Democrats in Congress and in the state houses. Now, on the bright side, Democratic AGs have continued the antitrust case against what's the Ticketmaster and Live Nation, the duopoly that is fixing ticket prices for entertainment, which is something important to actual people in this country. And I think they've done a great job of positioning the Democrats to take on the corruption. I mean, there was clearly a corrupt deal between the Trump Department of Justice and I think nobody was more stunned than the judge and the DOJ when well, first of all, the people that were most stunned were the lawyers who were trying the Live Nation case in court, which halfway through trial, when the lobbyists and the political arm of the Justice Department struck a deal to settle the case without even discussing it with the lawyers that were trying the case. But even more stunning was the fact that the state AG said, "Well, we haven't really prepared to try this case, but we're going to give it a shot, and we're in trial, and we're going to keep going." And even my Republican AG in Ohio is pressing forward along with the other state AGs to pursue that antitrust case, because I think real politicians who have a closer ear to the ground understand that making a deal with the people that are making it impossible to see your favorite band for working class and middle class people run a great political risk, and there's a great political benefit in a victory against those firms. And believe me, they wouldn't have settled if it wasn't going well for the plaintiffs, the states, and the Justice Department. So the states hold it. And those of you who are lawyers who are here and who are listening, and I'm sure there's more than a few, understand that picking up somebody's trial in the middle while it's going on is almost mission impossible. But that's the gumption that state AGs showed. So Patrick, you've been asking for where are the state AGs? Well, here they are. I mean, they've shown up at least in one setting going forward. And Lewis's victories with whistleblowers. And one more thing. I think Trump underestimated something that those of us who are lawyers know well, which is the unending arrogance and ego of judges. And he has not chosen to be abusive and disrespectful of judges, and it's starting to show in the decisions that they're making. Chief Justice Robert, even his ego had a limit of the subjugation that Trump wanted to make him demonstrate, and the fealty that he required of those folks. And so I think there's an exciting part of it is I'm proud of those judges, and I'm sure most of it is the rule of law. But I got to tell you something. You don't get to be a lifetime appointed federal judge without developing a healthy view of yourself. And I think that pissing in those people's mouths now for a year is not to the benefit of the goals of the Trump administration, and I don't think it has played. I think it certainly played a part in the backbone that judges have shown. Because what are they if they don't assert the rule of law? It's like their only job in life is to do that, and if they don't do that, then they're not the titans of jurisprudence that they think they are, and they've totally underestimated that, in my view.
Well, Eric, my friend Eric Vaughan, my colleague, my compatriot on this incredible journey to meet all of these wonderful folks in our years of working and muckraking to get investigative truths. I was really fascinated by kind of a collective sort of, takeaway that, both Hegseth and others within the administration, fancy themselves in Game of Thrones. And of course, we can consider, Trump, obviously the Mad King in all things, what we've learned, in the background of Targaryen. But look, I mean, this week, in addition to what Marc just said, I mean, we saw Alina Habba get stricken down for not being put in her position correctly, just like, Carrie Lake that Lewis had pointed out to us. And this presumption of, this is the legal term that you all taught me early, that the Department of Justice always had in the government, the presumption of just always having the right case, that even now in courts.
Of regularity.
Presumption of right.
Presumption of regularity. My apologies. Thank you very much, Lewis, and everybody else. But they don't have it anymore. Okay, so the courts recognize that, these judges that he just pointed out, but yet it's all this other, shall we say, chaos. But one thing that I know really concerns you and I is that ICE, as all of this stuff is happening, they're building more and more warehouses around the country, from what I understand. And this is what I'm getting in my neck of the woods. And I think you've heard about some of this as well. They're building these detention camps without the approval of states. So they're just kind of steamrolling whatever the gulags are that are coming next, which is a little terrifying, all things considered. Where are you coming today, given all the stuff that we're talking about and what you're seeing?
Um, so as one of the few non-lawyers on this panel, I'm going to be going on my proletarian rant, from a very non-expert perspective. But I do want to talk about law and rule of law and how important that is to, us people out there just trying to live our lives in the world. I am afraid that as our lives continue to get more desperate, as the affordability crisis becomes more acute, and as we continue to see powerful people not being accountable, not being, forced into account, that we're being further trained to be receptive as a populace for an authoritarian message. I mean, I think that basically dealing with that is in part how we got here and how we became susceptible to listening to, people, like Trump. I can't help but think, and I don't want to, make this too dramatic, but it's my understanding that a lot of the reasons for the Nuremberg trials was in order to reestablish the sense that there was an actual rule of law in the world, right? And it was because they saw that there was an opportunity to get powerful people on the record and to get the story of what they did on the record for the world to see, that there's an opportunity to reestablish a sense of law in the world. The notion was brought up earlier, what needs to happen in order for there to be any sort of sense of validity, with our government. And I'm going to speak both internally and externally. I mean, if we don't see prosecutions, at some future date, down the road when hopefully we've thrown this off of, this thing, that's been weighing us down off of us, um, where's the credibility going to be for the next government? How do we establish ourselves as any kind of a power for good in the world if we don't prosecute the people who have brought so much terror, so much horror, and so much grift into the world? And from within this country, if we're not seeing prosecutions of every ICE agent that is caught doing something illegal, and every, I mean, all the way from that level all the way up to the top, how do we ever trust our government? How do we ever have the trust in institutions that is necessary for an actual functioning, thriving country? I just don't see that possibly happening. And then this kind of comes down to, yet another thing, and a story that was fairly big and very close to me. It hurt me deeply. This story about Cesar Chavez. As an American of Mexican descent, and as a person who very much admires the labor movement and everything that Chavez was doing as far as the movement was concerned, um, it's a really bitter thing to understand, the other side of him. And I think that, I mean, one, it's like I think that we should all, you know, uh, wherever we're pulling the statues and the boulevard names down of Cesar Chavez, we should be hoisting up the name of Dolores Huerta. Because if there's anybody that deserves that kind of accolade, it's her. To think about what she endured in order to keep that movement going is unthinkable. And if there's a hero in this story, it is absolutely positively her and the many more people like her that exist not only in that movement, but in so many different places in the world. But one of the things that was really kind of interesting to me is that when this story comes out, very quickly, there is like no question the statues were coming down, the signs were being covered, all these things happen very fast, exactly as it should. If we dared to treat the truly powerful in this country the same way we treated the legacy of Cesar Chavez, I think that we would be in a much different place.
Mm.
If we basically if everything, if the accountability that we're putting on Cesar Chavez is being placed on Trump, is being placed on so many other people, it would be a very different place. I mean, instantly statues were coming down. And right now we're still having people fighting and arguing over, Confederate statues coming down. Basically, if you're white and powerful in this country, you know what? You're in a different level of law. And if there's a two-tier law system, there is no law, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what we need to reestablish. If we're ever going to get our country back, we have to reestablish this. And one of the things that the law does, to kind of go back to the very beginning of this conversation, is it puts in place things that prevent truly incompetent decisions in place. I mean, the way that this war with Iran has been conducted has been nothing short of an absolute clown show. I mean, the lack of planning, the lack of understanding, what the actual situation, was on the ground and what have you. And this has real consequences. My good friend, one of my best friends from childhood, his daughter is in the army and was manning a radar installation for a THAAD battery in Jordan. And very early on in this war, I think it was the first weekend, they had basically, emptied out their ordnance and they were in the process of doing some reloading when they found out that there was a whole bunch of these drones coming through, these suicide drones that were coming in. It hit the radar installation. Um, it was a good thing that she had sent, because they were out of missiles for the THAAD installation, that she had sent the rest of her crew down into the bunker. And so she was manning the radar herself. Well, the radar got hit by one of these suicide drones. And I saw the picture of the installation. It was completely destroyed. And she survived, thank God. But I mean, a piece of shrapnel went through her arm and her shoulder. And were it not for the fact that it hit one of her ribs, it would have killed her. The lack of any sort of oversight with this president and this government almost killed a girl that I remember holding in my arms when she was like barely a day old. And this isn't something that we can take much longer. And we need to fix this fast.
Well said, Eric. And I want to, put a kind of close this particular incredibly powerful discussion this week on, reiterating that Eric and I go back now really 20 years in our career together, but 14 years on this journey of truth, asking the question of what about the integrity of law, which led us to the new Untouchables here, which have been demonstrating it their entire careers and doing just the opposite of what we would see from, of course, Trump in response to what Eric just laid out, to say, well, that's just the price they have to pay. Well, he's getting what, billions in backdoor from our enemies and putting people in the crosshairs. I mean, what is happening is insane. And to what June had said way back in the beginning, you know, it really took 2 global wars and a Great Depression to get us basically to the New Deal, right? And then truth and reconciliation. And to your point, Eric, and I would recommend everybody check out Nuremberg, the latest offering on Netflix, which really does a fantastic job. Stars Russell Crowe, Rami Malek, Michael Shanahan as Robert Jackson. But again, it only took 70 million people dying violently to get to that situation. Is that what we're faced with? Not if millions of you discover the new Untouchables and what these professionals are revealing to us week in and week out, and help share this offering that these professionals offer for free in light of the tall building law firms capitulating to Trump and playing behind the scenes to play roulette and gamble with our democracy, or maybe just basically play, well, I said roulette, I meant Russian roulette with our democracy. And, you know, I am just so tired of week in and week out hearing in the mainstream media all of the insanity that overwhelms us with this flood the zone strategy, where nobody can make heads or tails of a situation because you wake up the next day and there's 15 other horrific offenses for us to deal with. And we all know it can get and will monumentally worse unless those of us who understand systems, those who understand the lawlessness, those who understand the failure of our media, the failure of our institutions, come together behind people who know how the structure works and support and press forward what we can do to further the revelations of things that, for example, the whistleblowers who heroically put their careers on the line to provide us these insights that would lead someone like the Government Accountability Project to be able to get these cases, victory in these cases that impact tens of millions of Americans. And I'll finish with this. You know, we've talked for incessantly as a country about the Epstein files and about the disgrace of the victims and everything that's happened. And we're starting to get all of this different information of the most powerful people in the world that were involved with what exactly? Meanwhile, the Government Accountability Project, when we first started talking to Lewis 6 months ago, saved 327 Guatemalan children. That was also a direct path to another 2,000 children that were going to be evicted from this country into known sex trafficking rings. These are things that people can't understand or get to in this overwhelming just fire hose of misinformation, lies, and everything else. I just want to reiterate the fact that the new Untouchables, William K. Black, who's been doing it for decades, Marc Dann, who did what nobody else as a state AG did, brought a racketeering charge against the greatest racketeering effort in history that we're aware of. Paul Peltier just, gave his career and left when it didn't fulfill exactly what his professionalism required with his career at DOJ. Of course, June Carbone and everything she delivers to us week in and week out with this incredible insight and power. And of course, Lewis Clark with the Government Accountability Project. On behalf of Eric Vaughan, my name is Patrick Lovell. Thank you guys for.
Can I say one thing, Pat?
Sure.
Patrick? Yeah, just June usually says something optimistic to keep us going through the week to next weekend. She didn't do that this time.
Okay.
So I was looking forward to, the only other thing I had was The Bachelorette on Sunday night. Now that's been canceled. I don't know what I'm going to do, but till next time.
June, please give us something to hope for.
That's good enough.
June, no offering to give us some hope on the way out?
I think the cancellation of The Bachelorette is plenty hopeful.
All right.
I agree. I agree.
Everybody, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully the world is here next time when we meet next. All the best. Everybody check out the new untouchables.com. Please check out the cleannewdeal.org, and I'll have descriptions and links to everybody's work below. All the best. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.